I think it's important parents are on social networks for a couple of different reasons. One, I think that they need to learn how these sites and apps work and function so that they can better help their kids stay safe and use them properly. And two, yes, I think it's a vital part of kids being on these social networks to for their safety, for their parents to be on them with them as well. However, I will say that it's not enough that parents are coexisting on these apps or sites. There are other things that they need to be doing as well to make sure that their kids are making good decisions and that they're helping their kids stay safe while using them. So just coexisting, I don't think is enough, but I do think it's a good start, and I do think it's important that they're on what their kids, are on as well. I think rules and expectations are different for different families, but I think you will have the best chance of success if you start as early as your kids can navigate any sort of technology. My daughter is just 2 years old, and we have already started the conversation with her safety on the iPad, for example. She's not allowed to go to certain apps, and she knows that, and she'll look at me and say, Mama, I know touch this one. I know touch this one. She knows. And I think it'll be much easier for me in the long run now that I've started having this conversation with her at this young age, that she will expect that there are rules to be followed. We also, in our family personally, don't treat our devices like a toy. So she already knows at this young age that there are limitations, there are expectations. And I talk to a lot of high school, middle school parents who say, oh, well, now you tell me that I need to, impose these rules. How do you expect me to go and talk to my 15-year-old or my 12-year-old and say, okay, I need your cell phone in my room at night. You're only allowed to use it from this time to this time. And I agree, that is a huge, huge challenge. That's why I encourage parents to start setting the rules and expectations early and enforcing them at an early age, because it'll just be easier for them in the long run. Parents should 100% take the phones, devices at night. I think it is dangerous, and not only for bad things happening to them, right? I know as a grown woman, I have to keep my cell phone across the room because I will be on it all night long doing, reading senseless magazines or doing whatever that is not, way less beneficial than sleeping is. But, a lot of schools complain that these kids are on these devices all night long. And of course, there's the other side of it too. It's like, what our parents used to say, what good can go on in the middle of the night? You need to be home by 9 o'clock. Nothing good, my dad used to say, can ever happen after 9 o'clock at night. So, you can be in this house. And I think it's the same thing with cell phones and devices, that I'm not really sure what benefit kids get to having these things at their fingertips. I've heard many, many, many horror stories. So I think in that way, limiting their time and charging it actually is what I recommend. And the parents, if they want it to work tomorrow morning, you got to come charge it in my room. I think that is a good way. Again, start that expectation the minute they get to use the device or the minute they get a cell phone, and keep that rule going throughout. And I don't think, it won't be as large of an issue. I think computers should be kept in a public part of the house at all times. I worry about things like, I just actually saw something on the news about this hack that allows people to get into webcams remotely and turn on webcams. So I think it was on NBC, they did a test where they sent the two girls up in the bedroom where their laptop was, and they, from the kitchen, turned the webcam on and listened to every single thing that they were saying and doing. So I've always thought it was a good idea to keep it in a public place. But now with devices and, I know I don't have a desktop in my house, but if you do have one, I do recommend that you keep it in a public place. And I think it's the same thing for devices like tablets and cell phones and things like that. I don't know why kids need to go in their room and have privacy. I think it should be out in the open for parents to see and monitor and help, them stay safe. Cyberbullying is so different than anything we experienced as kids or they experienced as kids, because it's like bullying as we knew it on steroids. So, I was called fat when I was in 6th grade. I will never ever forget how it made me feel. I could tell you the kid's name, where I was standing, and how it impacted me for years. I mean, I'm 30 years old and I still remember how this made me feel and that pit in my stomach. However, today, he said it to my face. There was one other person around, and that was about it. That was the extent of it. I carried it with me, but, it wasn't broadcast to the entire school. And today, I find that kids are I actually just saw a great clip by Louis C.K. That was talking about why kids are mean now, why, cyberbullying is such a big issue. And he said that, if you tell someone they're fat or ugly to their face, you see them cringe and you get this knot in your stomach. But if you do it online or through some sort of device, you say, ooh, I don't have to see that. I don't have to deal with that, look in someone's eye when I told them that really mean thing. And that kind of made me feel empowered, because I have 20 people sharing it, 15 people liking it, giving a thumbs up, doing whatever they're doing. And it's a sense of strange empowerment, and it spreads like wildfire. So I think it is far, far different than the bullying, the schoolyard traditional bullying that we're used to. And it's, far reaching. It can be shared, reposted, liked, commented on, and can reach thousands, potentially millions of people within, a couple of minutes. And I think that that's really, really destructive. I find in my travels throughout the country, it's interesting that I see, one, on the East Coast maybe, or one school on the East Coast, I'll see that they're using a particular app or a particular site. And then, MySpace came up last year, and I don't even talk about MySpace anymore, because really no one in my experience anecdotally is using MySpace anymore, at least the kids that I'm talking to. But I went to a school in Texas, and a lot of the kids were still using MySpace. So I find it really interesting, the differences between age groups and the differences regionally, what kids are using and what kids are into. But in general, I do find a big trend. Kids are going away from sites like Facebook. Facebook has become really cumbersome. It's a lot to keep up with. It's changing constantly to really quick apps like Instagram. There's not a lot of maintenance to it. I can post a quick picture. I can post a quick comment. My friends can like it. My friends can not like it. My friends can make a quick comment about it, and that's it. It's the fast-paced apps that I find are kind of taking over these more cumbersome social networking sites like Facebook. Twitter, is a kind of a much easier app or site to handle, as well as as opposed to Facebook. But it's 10 of them come up every single day. So I'm finding that new things and new trends and new apps are being introduced every single day. But again, I think it's steering away from the longer ones where you have to fill out profiles and you have to friend people, and certain friends see certain things. They're looking for the easy, quick apps that allows them to do things and share things quickly. It's overwhelming for me, and I do this full time to keep up with all of the apps. I truly, when I go to schools, I learn about new apps and new sites every single day that I hadn't heard of. So it is hard for me, and this is what I do. This is my job, to stay on top of this stuff. But so I know that it's equally, if not more, overwhelming for parents to stay on top of what's next, what's the new app, what are my kids on now. But there are some tools that help you with that, and one of the things, one easy way that I recommend doing it is sharing a user ID. So for instance, if you're using Apple products, sharing, you have one username for your apps in iTunes so that you get notified whenever something is downloaded, whenever a new app comes up, and you can kind of do the research and look into that a little bit. So that's just a kind of a quick, there are certainly ways around that, but that is one thing that I recommend, because I think it's really important parents stay on top of what apps their kids are using and, how they work. Parents are so integral in making sure kids are behaving appropriately. And I find now, my talks 2 years ago to parents were, hey parents, this is Facebook. This is how we tag people. This is what tagging means. And today, my talk is, hey parents, keep those racy pictures off of Facebook. No one wants to see you partying, in your bathing suit and doing, all of these other things, but do as you want your kids to do, because if your kids see that you're friending everybody in the world, or you're posting any picture, you're not using any privacy settings, they're going to do the same exact thing, right? A lot of the old-fashioned rules of parenting apply to all of this crazy technology. We want to be good examples and good role models in all of our behaviors, including our behaviors on social networking sites, especially our behaviors on social networking sites, so that we can make sure our kids are being responsible as well. Geotagging and tracking, actually, it scares me that a lot of parents and kids don't even know that this exists, that on your phone, most apps are actually automatically turned on to geotagging, which means every action you do with any particular app that has a geotagging capability, which are most apps, by the way, will tag you in a specific location at any given time. Whether you make a comment, you post a picture, you like something, whatever it may be, this is tagged with a GPS kind of tracking. And also within these sites, there are other apps that allow you to track the geo-tracking of these apps. So, for instance, my husband had his, unbeknownst to him, turned on his phone, and when we were in Boston one day for lunch, he just got an alert up on his phone that 10 people were in the area that he was in, and he thought, how do they know where I am? I can't believe that these other people are getting this notification that he is in the area, and it just really, really concerns me. I tell parents that they and their children should have geotagging off for any app that you don't need it for. So, for instance, I'm a runner, so I use Map My Run. I need the geotagging location on for Map My Run of the location services so it can show me how far or how not far I ran. But for something like Instagram or something like Facebook, if I take a picture of, this beautiful scenery in Seattle, I don't need, thousands of people to know where I am pinpointed on a map at that given time. There's no need for that. If you need to share that you're on a certain street in Seattle, then, share it, say it in your comment. You don't need to be automatically tagged every single place you go. So that is a big concern for me. Digital tattoo really means once you send, share, or save something, you can't take that back, much like a tattoo. Once you get that big old tattoo on your back or your arm or wherever it may be, sure, there are certain things that we can do to try to make it go away, but it really is there forever, and it's the same thing with technology. Kids think, and many adults, by the way, think when they post something that is only being shared with their friends, that no one else will ever see this. And this is evident in all the news stories we see. Man, I could come up with 10 examples of my own personal friends who have posted things that I sat there and thought, what if your boss ever got a hold of this? What if your mom ever saw this? And I just think that people have this false sense of security that we're posting things maybe in a setting that we use an email and password for, and that it will never be shared elsewhere. Well, you can copy, paste, you can resend things, you can repost things, and there are even apps now like Snapchat that brag that it, deletes these certain things, and that's not how it works. It's very, very easy to take a picture. It's very easy to take a picture of that screen with another device. There's ways around it. So I urge people to think before you post, because once you put it out there, you really can't take it back. This past spring, I actually did an interview with a magazine in Arizona, I believe, that did this study on millennials and your offline versus your online persona. And I don't quite remember the numbers. I'd have to go look at it. But there's a big trend that we display ourselves differently online than we actually act in person. And they actually interviewed a psychologist for this as well. It was really interesting take on why people kind of assume this, that it's this world where we can be anything we want to be. Or for instance, I read an article about how people are constantly, like moms are constantly posting these pictures of their kids, their perfect children in their perfect world. And I have to be honest, I post a lot of pictures of my kids, and my kids have some pretty tough moments, but I don't post those ones online. I post the ones that I'm proud of, where they're happy, they're smiling, they're in love, not the one where, my daughter is tackling my son on the, ground and they're both crying and screaming and, but we do that, I think, it's kind of a natural part of what we do, but it can also become problematic when people kind of assume more or portray more or less than, who they really are. And I think that that's something that is going to be a big growing interest in part of research in the upcoming years, because I think it's gotten even, I think it's progressed even, from the millennials to the next generation. I think we're going to see a big difference in that as well. I read a great article just last month, and I posted on my website from Teen Vogue about the psychology of selfies. And I found it fascinating, actually, because I had never really looked at this perspective. And it was talking about how, we all roll our eyes when these kids are taking pictures of themselves, and, the duck face with the lips and stuff like that. And I kind of look at them a lot and roll my eyes. But, it's really interesting that one of the psychologists was interviewed as well for this Teen Vogue magazine on selfies. And she said, but wait a minute, this isn't all bad. Some kids are getting great responses from these things, and yes, they put themselves in a good light, and they make themselves look really pretty or get themselves at a good angle, but they're getting great, beautiful, you look wonderful feedback from it. So what's the harm in kids feeling good about themselves? Of course, we have the other side of things where, you always have those one or two people that will say, oh, great picture, or oh, another selfie, or something mean. But I do think that there's some truth to that there's some other side, that kids are getting some satisfaction and some kind of stroking their egos when people are responding positively to these pretty or good pictures that they post. And I think that's great. I'm happy to give people compliments if they look good and, it makes them feel good. And I don't think we should knock that. So I do think that there is an element to it that can be dangerous when kids are posting these too much, and maybe they're not getting what they need, elsewhere. They don't need to just seek approval online. But I do think there's an element to it that this article revealed that's actually can be kind of positive sometimes.